What happens when the man chosen by fate chooses someone else instead? And can a wounded heart ever trust love again after such a betrayal? Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Before we begin, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another emotional story of destiny, courage, and unexpected love. Your support helps this channel continue bringing you powerful stories filled with heartbreak, hope, and second chances. Thank you sincerely for watching, for sharing these stories, and for being part of this growing community. Tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and what time it is there right now. Now let us begin the story. Take your hand off the oath stone, Claire. Mason Caldwell's voice cut through the wedding hymn. Claire Bennett froze. Her palm hovered above the black stone at the center of Silverpine's Moon Hall. Beneath her ribs, the fated mate bond still reached for Mason with the same warm certainty it had carried for 6 years. Her body still recognized him, even as he reached for her younger sister. Lillian will wear the Luna crown, Mason said. The last note from the musicians faded. No one moved. Silver lanterns burned beneath the curved galleries. Winter roses surrounded the ceremonial platform. Hundreds of pack members watched from behind pale columns, dressed for the night Claire had believed would finally place her beside the man fate had chosen for her. Instead, Lillian stood near the crown in a silver gown. Not blue. Not white. Silver. The color reserved for Silverpine's Luna. Claire had noticed the gown when her sister entered the hall. She had noticed their stepmother adjusting its collar. She had noticed Mason refusing to meet her eyes. But love had taught Claire to search for harmless explanations. Now every explanation collapsed. What did you say? Mason looked at her with the controlled patience he used when speaking to frightened petitioners. You remain my fated mate. Nothing can change that. His hand settled beside Lillian's. But she will serve Silverpine as Luna. A whisper passed through the galleries. Claire turned toward her family. Her father stared at the floor. Margaret Bennett, her stepmother, stood proudly behind Lillian. No one looked surprised. They had known. The ceremony had not gone wrong. It had been designed this way. Claire looked back at Mason. And what am I supposed to become? High Elder Silas Hawthorne stepped forward in dark ceremonial robes. You will serve as bondkeeper. Your connection to Alpha Mason will strengthen the Luna crown and secure the Southern treaties. Claire stared at him, then at Mason. You want my bond? Her gaze shifted to Lillian. But not me beside you. Mason's jaw tightened. This is larger than personal disappointment. 3 Southern packs control the winter grain roads. Their council will not recognize our treaty unless Lillian becomes Luna. Why her? Margaret answered before Mason could. Lillian has the temperament expected of a public Luna. Claire almost laughed. 4 years, she had written Mason's council addresses. She had calmed grieving families after border raids. She had prepared treaty records and sat through winter hearings until dawn. Mason had accepted the praise. Claire had accepted the silence. Now her silence was being used as evidence that she had never been fit to lead. Lillian's eyes shone beneath the lanterns. Mason said you would still be honored. Claire studied her sister's face. Honored how? Silas gestured toward the oath stone. You will swear permanent service to the Alpha line. Your bond will remain protected. Your gift will strengthen every ruling covenant spoken beneath Mason's authority. May I leave after the Southern Treaty is signed? No one answered. May I refuse a council command? Mason looked toward Silas. Claire's breathing slowed. May I choose another life? Margaret stepped forward. Do not humiliate this family because your feelings are hurt. Claire turned toward her. You planned this before I entered the hall. We planned what Silverpine needed. Mason moved closer, lowering his voice as though tenderness could soften what he had done. I am trying to protect everyone. A thin sound passed beneath his words. Claire stiffened. It resembled glass cracking beneath frozen water. Small. Sharp. Wrong. She had heard faint echoes before. During council meetings, private promises, apologies that never felt complete. She had always dismissed them as imagination. But this sound came through the oath stone itself. Claire stared at Mason. That was not true. The hall fell silent. His expression hardened. You are overwhelmed. Silas placed one hand above the stone. This vow is freely offered. The sound came again. Louder. Black veins spread through the stone beneath his fingers. Several elders stepped back. Elder Jonathan Mercer rose from the neutral covenant bench. Remove Claire from the altar. Silas turned. The stone is reacting to her instability. The stone is reacting to falsehood. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe love should never demand your silence, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us, true strength is gentle, and destiny means nothing without choice. Now back to Claire. The black veins widened until the entire oath stone lost its silver glow. A chair moved beneath the western gallery. Every head turned. Everett Blackwood, Alpha King of Ravenshade, rose from the shadows. He wore no crown, only a dark royal mantle fastened by 2 silver clasps, and the calm authority of a man who did not need to announce his power. His steel-gray eyes rested first on the corrupted stone, then on Claire. No lawful covenant begins by silencing the woman whose life it intends to bind. Mason faced him. This is a Silverpine ceremony. Everett descended 1 step. Not after the stone rejected it. Silas's mouth tightened. The ceremony will continue. A hard fracture rang beneath his words. Claire flinched. This time several elders heard it. Jonathan stepped between her and the altar. No oath may proceed while the stone rejects the speaker. Mason's wolf pressed close beneath his skin. His scent sharpened with anger and territorial command. Claire is confused. The fated mate bond has made her unstable. The bond is not the cause, Jonathan replied. He turned toward the galleries. Claire Bennett carries the moon echo. The murmurs became louder. Claire looked at him. What is that? An old Omega gift. Truth passes through a sworn covenant cleanly. Deception leaves a fracture in the sound. Jonathan looked toward the black stone. When a false seal is used against a coerced speaker, a moon echo may also hear the intention hidden beneath the spoken vow. Claire remembered her mother pausing during council ceremonies, her head tilted as if listening to something no one else could hear. My mother had it. Margaret's expression changed. Only for a breath. Jonathan saw it. Evelyn Bennett served as an independent oath recorder before her name disappeared from the council rolls. Silas lifted his hand. That history has no relevance here. A crack split beneath his voice. Claire no longer doubted what she heard. Everett descended the remaining steps and stopped several paces away from her. He did not offer his hand. He did not tell her what to do. He simply placed himself where Mason could no longer reach her without witnesses. Jonathan faced Claire. If you complete the bondkeeper vow, Mason's authority will govern the use of your moon echo. You will not be permitted to leave Silverpine without approval. You will not be able to refuse a council summons. His voice grew quieter. In time, you may no longer hear falsehood spoken in Mason's name. Claire looked at the man fate had tied to her. Did you know? Mason hesitated. I knew the role required loyalty. A faint fracture followed. That was not my question. Lillian finally looked at him. You told me Claire would be released after the grain treaty. I said she would be safe. The lie cracked beneath his words. Lillian stepped away from him. Only half a step. But Claire saw it. Something inside her became still. Not healed. Not forgiven. Simply certain. Mason still valued the bond between them. He still wanted her warmth, her loyalty and the authority her gift could give him. He had merely chosen a future where Claire's love required her disappearance. I never stopped loving you, he said. The bond answered him before her mind could resist. Warmth moved beneath her ribs. Pain followed it. Claire swallowed. Then why does loving me require that I become silent? Mason had no answer. Jonathan removed an old covenant roll from his mantle. Claire may refuse the bondkeeper ceremony and request sanctuary under the moon covenant. Silas's eyes narrowed. Jonathan continued. There is also an older provision. When a ruling house attempts to bind an Omega's gift through mate or marriage law, she may request crown marriage protection from an independent sovereign. A law abandoned for generations, Silas said. Not repealed. Jonathan faced Claire. The request does not create the marriage here. It places you beneath temporary covenant protection, while the terms are written, examined and signed before neutral witnesses. His voice became firmer. Until that agreement is completed or refused, Silverpine may not confine you, compel your bond or use your presence to validate another oath. Claire looked toward Everett. And after the document is signed? If you freely enter the crown marriage, Jonathan said, the union will place you beyond Silverpine's ruling authority for 1 year. Either spouse may end it earlier through a witnessed release covenant. Everett's gaze remained on Claire. Ravenshade will honor the provision. Mason stepped forward. You would marry a woman you have never met? I would offer her a lawful door, Everett replied. Then he addressed Claire directly. If you choose to enter the marriage after reading every condition, there will be no mate claim, no mark, no transfer of bloodline, land, gift or authority. He paused. Separate chambers. Full access to Ravenshade's records. The right to leave whenever you choose. And a release covenant whenever you ask for one. Claire searched his face. Why? Because a crown that needs a woman's silence is not worth strengthening. There was no fracture beneath his words. Only clean silence. I want every condition written, Claire said. I keep my name. I keep control of my moon echo. You will not speak for me before any council unless I ask. You will not use my bond with Mason against Silverpine. Everett inclined his head. Agreed. I may investigate every record connected to my mother, including records that dishonor Ravenshade. Especially those. Jonathan raised the covenant roll. The proposed conditions are witnessed. Mason looked at Claire as though the fated mate bond should still make the decision for her. Do not throw away our future because of one ceremony. Claire looked at the black oath stone, then at Lillian's silver gown. This ceremony did not destroy our future. She met his eyes. It revealed what you had already chosen. She stepped away from him. The bond pulled so violently that her knees almost weakened. Claire kept walking. She crossed the platform toward Everett. He did not reach for her. Only when she stopped before him did he offer his hand. Claire looked at it, then placed her palm in his. Mason's voice followed her. If you leave, the council will reveal what your mother really did. Claire stopped. Behind her, a single silver line appeared across the black oath stone. Not healing it, breaking through it. Mason had meant the threat as a chain. Instead, he had given her another reason to leave. Claire turned toward Jonathan. I refuse the bondkeeper vow. The stone brightened faintly beneath her words. And I request temporary crown marriage protection until I have read the agreement for myself. Jonathan pressed the full crescent seal into the covenant roll. The request is accepted. The oath stone flashed silver. Not to seal a marriage. To witness that, for the first time that night, Claire's choice had been freely spoken. Everett's fingers closed carefully around hers. The road to Ravenshade is open, he said. Claire looked toward the doors. Then let us leave before Silverpine decides freedom requires another discussion. Everett stepped aside. He did not lead her out. Claire walked first. Snow followed them to Ravenshade. Claire sat beside the carriage window while Silverpine's towers disappeared behind the pines. The bond still reached backward. Every mile stretched it thinner and sharper. Mason's presence moved beneath her ribs like a familiar song played in the wrong room. Across from her, Everett remained silent. He did not ask whether she regretted leaving. He did not tell her she had made the right choice. He gave her something no one in Silverpine had given her that night. Room to decide what her choice meant. Ravenshade appeared before dawn, black stone towers rising above a frozen river. Claire expected an armed court. Instead, the gates opened onto workers clearing snow, healers carrying supplies and children crossing the lower courtyard with baskets of bread. Captain Wesley Grant waited beside two neutral witnesses. The agreement chamber is prepared, he said. Everett looked at Claire. You may read it tonight, tomorrow, or tear it apart. Tonight. They entered a small circular chamber lit by oil lamps. Claire's request at Silverpine had granted her temporary protection. This document would determine whether she entered the marriage itself. Jonathan's proposed conditions had arrived ahead of them by rider, but Ravenshade's recorder had added no clause without Claire's approval. She read every line herself. She kept her name, her moon echo gift, her lands and holdings, her right to leave Ravenshade without permission. Everett received no authority over her fated mate bond, no access to her bloodline, and no right to speak in her name. The union would end after 1 year unless both renewed it freely. Either party could dissolve it earlier through a witnessed release covenant. Claire reached the final page. This agreement grants Ravenshade no claim over Silverpine. No, Everett said. And no claim over anything I recover from my mother's records. None. She looked toward the witnesses. What happens if I refuse to sign? Captain Wesley answered from beside the record table. The temporary protection remains until morning. After that, Lady Claire may leave through the south gate under neutral escort. Everett did not move. No disappointment crossed his face. No pressure entered his scent. The refusal was genuinely available to her. Claire picked up the pen. She signed her own name. Not Everett's. Not Silverpine's. Claire Bennett. Only then did Everett add his signature beneath hers. The recorder placed the document upon a small silver covenant stone. When you join hands, she said, the stone will recognize the marriage only if both vows are freely given. Everett waited. Claire placed her palm into his when she was ready. His grip was warm, steady, and careful. Claire Bennett, do you enter this crown marriage by your own will? Ido. The stone remained clear. Everett Blackwood, do you accept every limit written within this covenant? Ido. No glass cracked. No darkness spread beneath the surface. The stone shone silver. Clean. Whole. The crown marriage was sealed. For the first time in Claire's life, marriage had not been defined by what another person expected to receive from her. It had been defined by everything she remained free to keep. Afterward, Everett led her to the southern wing. He placed 3 keys in her hand. The brass key opens your chamber. The silver key opens the south gate. The iron key opens the royal archive. Claire looked at him. You are giving me access to everything. Everything connected to your mother. Everything connected to the hollow crown. Everything my family would prefer forgotten. And which key opens your chamber? A trace of amusement touched his eyes. None of those. Her room held no Ravenshade banners and no Luna crown. The door locked only from within. The south staircase opened directly toward the village road. Everett had not merely promised freedom. He had placed it in her hand. Claire entered the royal archive before sunrise. Rows of records disappeared into shadow beneath the vaulted ceiling. She found her mother's name in an oath register. Evelyn Bennett. Moon Echo. Independent witness to the Northern Council. The next line had been scraped away. A later document accused Evelyn of stealing protected records and betraying Silverpine. But the witness marks did not match. She did not steal them. Claire turned. A thin boy stood near the archive door holding repaired parchment. The gray ribbon at his wrist marked him as an Omega apprentice. My grandmother worked with Evelyn, he said. She told me to give this to her daughter. He introduced himself as Noah Parker and handed Claire a torn page marked by a hollow crown. Beneath it, Evelyn had written, a false oath may be made lawful in the eyes of the stone when marked by a hollow crown seal. Claire remembered Mason's ceremonial ring. The same symbol had been carved beneath its black setting. Rebecca Lawson joined Claire and Noah beneath the archive lamps later that morning. She was Ravenshade's senior healer and keeper of damaged Covenant records. A quiet woman whose gray-green mantle smelled faintly of dried herbs and smoke. Noah placed a torn register before her. The lower writing has been scraped away. Rebecca examined the parchment beneath the light. Scraped, she said, but not completely removed. She opened a narrow wooden case and took out several dried moonleaf petals. Claire watched as Rebecca crushed them into a silver dish, added 3 drops of warm water, and brushed the pale mixture across the damaged page. For several breaths nothing happened. Then faded words began rising beneath the scraped surface. Not black. Silver. As though the parchment itself had been waiting for someone to ask what had been taken from it. Claire leaned closer. Bondkeeper. Another line appeared beneath it. Permanent service without right of refusal. Her stomach tightened. Rebecca brushed Moonleaf over the next page. A list of women emerged. Some possessed healing gifts. Others carried prophetic dreams, bloodline memory, or the ability to recognize false vows. Beside every name appeared the same final notation. Gift absorbed into the ruling crown. Independent voice removed. Noah stopped turning the pages. How many were there? Rebecca looked toward the shelves. These are only the records Ravenshade managed to recover. Claire felt the moon echo stir inside her, not as a sound but as pressure, as though generations of silenced voices had drawn one collective breath. They did not only take their gifts, she said. They erased the person who could object to how the gift was used. Rebecca nodded. That was the purpose of the bondkeeper system. Claire looked down at the silver words. Mason and Silas had called the position an honor. The original record called it permanent service without refusal. The difference between those phrases was the difference between ceremony and truth. My mother found these records, Claire said. That is why they removed her. Noah touched the edge of Evelyn's torn warning. and why they needed you before you understood what you could hear. Footsteps sounded beyond the archive door. Everett stopped at the threshold carrying a narrow wooden case. He looked from Claire to the restored silver writing. You found the original definition. Claire turned the parchment toward him. Bondkeeper was never an honored position. No, Everett said. His expression became grave. It was a beautiful name placed over a cage. He entered only after Claire nodded. Then he placed the wooden case on the table. Before you decide whether Ravenshade deserves your trust, you should see what my own family did with that cage. He opened the lid. Inside lay a broken black ring engraved with the hollow crown. My father's, he said. Claire looked up. He used a hollow crown seal during the border war. Families surrendered land because the Oathstones accepted promises their hearts never made. You knew. I discovered it after taking the throne. He placed several restoration decrees beside the ring. I broke the seal and returned every claim I could verify. Some families had already vanished. Some losses could not be repaired. Why show me this? Because trust built on hidden truth is another form of control. He did not ask her to absolve Ravenshade. He did not blame his father's war. He stood beside the evidence of his own house's shame. For the first time, Claire understood that honesty was not the absence of guilt. It was the refusal to hide it. 3 days later, a messenger arrived from Silverpine. The council gathered beneath Ravenshade's black rafters. Claire sat beside the recorders, not beside Everett's throne. The messenger opened a silver-sealed declaration. Lillian Bennett has entered the Luna Covenant freely. She accepts Mason Caldwell as her chosen husband and requests that Claire Bennett cease all interference. The words sounded smooth. The other council members heard nothing. Claire heard glass breaking beneath every line. Then something softer rose beneath the false declaration. Lillian's voice. Distant. Terrified. Claire, please. Claire rose. Everett's attention shifted to her. What did you hear? The declaration is false. The hollow crown hidden beneath the Silverpine seal flashed. Lillian's buried intention returned. I cannot leave. Then one final whisper. They are watching me. Claire gripped the table. Lillian had stood beside Mason. She had accepted the gown. She had watched while Claire was nearly bound for life. But the truth was now clear. Her sister had stepped into a cage she believed had been built only for someone else. I have to return. Everett descended from the throne. Do you want me beside you? Yes. She met his eyes. But as my witness. Not my shield. Then that is what I will be. They rode south before dawn. The bond grew stronger as Silverpine approached. Mason's presence moved beneath Claire's ribs, painfully familiar. She hated that part of her still knew him. She hated even more that knowing him had never meant understanding him. They met Lillian inside an abandoned moon temple beyond Silverpine's eastern boundary. Her silver gown was hidden beneath a gray cloak. No crown rested on her head. You came, she whispered. Claire closed the door. Everett remained near the entrance, keeping the road open. You sent the warning. Lillian nodded. Silas forced me to copy the declaration. The seal buried what I meant to say. Can you leave? No. They moved me into the western tower. Every letter is inspected. I wear the crown only when they need my face before another pact. Claire felt anger rise. Not only for what had been done to Lillian. For what Lillian had first agreed to do to her. You accepted it. Lillian flinched. I know. You stood beside Mason while they prepared a vow that would take my freedom. I believed you would be released after the Southern Treaty. You believed what made it easier to take my place. Tears filled Lillian's eyes. She did not deny it. Yes. The honesty hurt more than an excuse. I wanted to be chosen once. Mother always said you had the gift, Father's trust and Mason's bond. When he looked at me, I told myself it was finally my turn. You knew something was wrong. I knew enough to ask fewer questions. Claire's throat tightened. So do not tell me you were innocent. I am not. Lillian's voice broke. I was deceived, but I also deceived myself. Silence settled between them. Claire was not ready to forgive her. But truth had finally entered the room. What changed? Lillian removed a dark green journal from beneath her cloak. Mother left this in my chamber. She believed I would understand the arrangement. Margaret's handwriting filled the pages. Private meetings. Payments. Agreements with Silas. One passage named Lillian as temporary Luna until the Southern grain treaties were secured. Another required Claire to remain permanent bondkeeper. The final transfer placed all oath authority under Silas. You were never meant to rule, Claire said. Lillian gave a bitter smile. Neither was Mason. She turned several pages. Mason changed after Silas gave him the hollow crown ring. But the first agreement was made before that. Claire's fingers tightened around the journal. He chose you before wearing the seal. Yes. Lillian met her eyes. He chose the council's support. He chose the Grain Alliance. He chose me because Mother promised I would never challenge him. The truth cut cleanly. No magic had stolen Mason. No false seal had created his ambition. The seal had only made it easier for him to live with it. Lillian removed one final page. It bore Evelyn Bennett's name. Claire read the order twice. Her mother had not died in the carriage accident. She had been transferred to an isolated northern monastery beneath Silas's seal. Her identity had been erased from every public record. She is alive. Lillian nodded. Mother knew. Claire pressed the journal against her chest. For 12 years, she had mourned a woman Silverpine had never buried. Now Evelyn was waiting beyond the mountains. They returned to Ravenshade before beginning the northern journey. That night, Claire found Everett alone in the archive courtyard. Snow drifted between the black stone arches. He stood beside a small brazier, repairing the broken clasp on one of Noah's record cases. You repair archive boxes? Only when the apprentice threatens to use rope. Claire almost smiled. Everett set the clasp aside. You should rest. I cannot. The bond still pulled toward Mason. Her mother was alive. Her sister was trapped. Every truth seemed to demand another choice before Claire had finished surviving the last one. Everett watched her carefully, not searching for weakness, waiting for permission. Why did you agree to marry me? Claire asked. I told you. You offered me a lawful door. That explains the crown. She stepped closer. It does not explain you. Everett looked toward the falling snow. My mother carried a witness gift. Claire became still. My father used it during the border war. Every oath she heard became a weapon for his counsel. What happened to her? She stopped speaking in public. His voice remained controlled, but sorrow moved beneath it. She survived him. She did not survive becoming invisible. Claire understood then. He had not risen in Silverpine only because the law had been broken. He had recognized the shape of the cage. I could not change what happened to her, Everett said. But I could refuse to watch it happen again. Claire looked at his hands. Powerful enough to command an army. Careful enough to repair a child's wooden box. Do you pity me? No. His eyes met hers. I respect that you were afraid and still said no. The words reached a place Mason had never seen. Claire's breath trembled. Everett lifted one hand, then stopped before touching her face. May I? Claire nodded. His fingers brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek. The contact was brief. Warm. Nothing in it demanded an answer. When this is over, Claire said, the marriage may no longer be necessary. I know. You could lose every political advantage it gives Ravenshade. I did not marry you for an advantage. She listened. No crack. Only truth. Everett stepped back first. Whatever you choose afterward, the door remains open. Claire looked toward the archive windows. For years, Mason had told her fate meant she belonged beside him. Everett was teaching her that love might mean being free to leave. The northern monastery stood beyond a ridge of black firs. Its pale walls disappeared into winter fog. A gray-haired keeper led them through a narrow corridor. Evelyn Bennett has lived here under covenant protection for 12 years. Claire heard the fracture. Not protection. The keeper lowered his eyes. Confinement. A door opened. The woman beside the window was thinner than Claire remembered. Silver threaded her chestnut hair. But her green eyes had not changed. Claire stopped breathing. Evelyn rose. My little moon. Claire crossed the room. Her mother's arms closed around her, warm and trembling. 12 years of grief broke open without sound. They told me you were dead, Claire whispered. They told me you had forgotten me. They erased your name. Evelyn held Claire's face between her hands. They tried. Her gaze moved toward Everett. And yet a Blackwood king brought you here. Everett bowed. Your daughter brought herself. I only opened the road. No fracture followed. Evelyn heard the clean silence too. Then Ravenshade has changed. Claire placed Margaret's journal and the hollow crown records on the table. Evelyn touched the symbol. This seal cannot create ambition, she said. It only enlarges what a person already carries. Mason chose the Southern Alliance before Silas gave him the ring. Claire closed her eyes. He chose Lillian first. He chose power first. Evelyn's voice softened. The ring helped him call that choice necessity. She opened a wooden case wrapped in blue silk. Inside lay an ancient parchment. The first oath. Before Alpha Councils controlled the Covenant courts, Moon Echoes had served as independent witnesses. If one spoke the opening truth beneath a lawful bell, every connected bell in the Northern Territories would answer. It would summon a moon trial no ruling house could refuse. But the first oath demands truth from the witness who awakens it, Evelyn said. Not a convenient truth. The one you fear most. Claire looked toward the snowy window. She wanted betrayal to erase love. She wanted Mason to become a stranger so leaving him would no longer hurt. But the bond still lived beneath her ribs. Memories still existed. I know what I have to say. They carried the parchment into the monastery chapel. Everett and Wesley remained at the doors. Evelyn fastened the first oath beneath the old bell. Claire stood beneath the rope. Her hand pressed against the place where the mate bond still answered Mason. A part of me still loves him. The words left her cleanly. No crack. Only painful silence. Evelyn placed her hand over Claire's. Truth does not command you to return. It only prevents the past from speaking through a lie. Claire placed her palm against the parchment. Let every vow hidden by power answer before those it was meant to bind. The first oath warmed. Claire pulled the rope. The monastery bell rang across the mountains. Another bell answered from the eastern valley. Then another beyond the northern ridge. One by one, Covenant bells awakened across the territories. The moon trial had begun. 3 days later, the northern packs gathered in the ancient Covenant square between Silverpine and Ravenshade. Frost covered the stone terraces. Claire stood beside the first oath with Evelyn and Jonathan. Everett remained among the visiting rulers. Not beside her. Not behind her. Where any lawful witness would stand. Mason faced the Covenant bench beneath Silverpine's crest. Lillian stood several steps away in a plain gray dress. She wore no crown. Margaret and Silas waited beside the evidence table. Jonathan raised his staff. This trial will determine whether Claire Bennett was targeted for permanent service without consent, whether lawful vows were altered and whether Moon Echo witnesses were erased. Silas stepped forward. Claire abandoned her pact to gain the power of a rival king. A fracture exploded beneath his words. Every witness heard it. Gasps crossed the square. The first oath had amplified Claire's gift. No falsehood could now hide inside ceremony. Margaret lifted her chin. Evelyn was confined because grief made her unstable. A deeper crack followed. Evelyn did not look away. Mason stepped forward. I never wanted Claire to suffer. The bond tightened. A faint fracture came. Not entirely false. Claire understood. He had not desired her pain. He had simply desired power more than he wished to prevent it. Lillian entered the center of the square. Her hands trembled. I knew Claire was being pushed aside. Silence followed. Clean. I knew the ceremony was wrong. No fracture. I accepted the Luna crown because I wanted to be chosen. The truth settled heavily across the stone. Lillian looked at Claire. I was lied to. But I also chose not to ask what the lie would cost her. Claire felt the wound inside her. Honesty did not erase it. But it stopped the wound from being covered by another falsehood. Margaret's journal was read aloud. No long arguments followed. The evidence was simple. Claire would provide lifelong power. Lillian would provide a compliant public face. Mason would receive the Southern Alliance. Silas would control every ruling oath. Then Rebecca Lawson presented the restored bondkeeper register. The silver words appeared clearly beneath the moonleaf treatment. Permanent service without right of refusal. A murmur traveled across the terraces. Rebecca placed the broken hollow crown ring beside it. The seal cannot create ambition, she said. It can only magnify it, force an oath stone to recognize coerced words and bury the true intention of a person made to speak. Mason removed his ring. Silas gave this to me after I agreed to choose Lillian. The square became silent. Claire looked at him. He no longer had magic to blame. The council told me Silverpine would starve, Mason said. They told me sharing authority with the Moon Echo would weaken the Alpha line. And you believed them? Claire asked. I believed I could keep you and protect the pack. You believed you could keep my love after removing my freedom. His face tightened. The bond is real. Yes. Claire stepped toward him. The bond is real. Her voice carried across every terrace. So was your choice. Mason lowered his eyes. For the first time, the fated mate bond did not feel like a command. Felt like a scar. Proof that something had existed. Not proof that it should continue. Silas seized the Luna crown. Enough. Mason is still Alpha. Lillian is still Luna. The covenant cannot erase a lawful ceremony. The crown darkened beneath his hands. Claire heard thousands of fractures. Not from one oath. From generations of them. The first oath flared. Silver names appeared across the central stone. Women erased from inheritance rolls. Omegas bound into service. Witnesses removed from records. Voices rose through every connected bell in the north. Silas clutched the crown as if strength could force it back into silence. Stop this. The lie cracked so loudly that witnesses covered their ears. Jonathan raised his staff. The first oath is restoring what your seal buried. Silas looked toward Mason. Command your pack. Mason stood beneath the silver pine crest. For the first time he did not obey. You used my ambition, he said. The statement passed cleanly. Then his voice lowered. But I gave you access to it. Margaret turned toward Lillian. Take the crown. Complete the vow before everything is lost. Lillian stared at the silver circlet. The object she had once believed would prove her value. She removed the final Luna ribbon from her waist and placed it on the stone. I will not wear a crown built from my sister's silence. No fracture came. Claire felt something loosen inside her. Not forgiveness. The first possible road toward it. The restored names continued appearing. Noah read them aloud beside Evelyn so none could vanish again. Scribes copied every name into new covenant rolls. Silas's hidden seal separated from the crown and fell onto the stone. Cold. Powerless. Several Silverpine elders turned toward Everett. Ravenshade commands the strongest independent army. Take temporary authority before Silverpine falls into disorder. Everett looked toward Claire. Then toward Silverpine's households. No. The square stilled. Silverpine does not need another alpha taking control, while its people are trying to recover their voices. He faced the alphas, betas and omegas gathered beneath the terraces. Choose your own stewards. Let no crown replace one form of control with another. No crack followed. Claire watched him refuse power offered in public. Mason had sacrificed her freedom to secure authority. Everett surrendered authority to protect freedom. Jonathan declared Silas removed from every covenant office. Margaret lost control of the Bennett lands and household records. Mason's leadership was suspended until Silverpine's sworn households chose new stewards and decided whether he would ever be permitted to return. Lillian surrendered the Luna claim and asked to work beneath neutral supervision restoring erased names. Then Claire stepped before the central stone. Let this be recorded. The first oath warmed beneath her hand. No mate bond, marriage vow, Luna covenant or service to a pack may be recognized without clear consent before independent witnesses. The black surface began to clear. No gift may be taken from the person who carries it, and no silence may be treated as agreement. Silver light moved through every restored name. Claire looked toward the rulers gathered beneath the terraces. Her gaze passed over Silas, Margaret, Mason, then rested briefly on Everett, the only king present who had been offered more power and chosen not to take it. Her final words were quiet. They carried across the entire square. And let no ruler ever call possession protection again. The stone reflected the winter sky. No fracture followed. The covenant accepted her words. The trial was over. But Everett approached Claire carrying one final parchment. Black ribbon surrounded it. Her heart tightened. What is that? A release covenant. The square became silent again. Everett placed it in her hands. His signature already rested at the bottom. The crown marriage had protected her from Silverpine. Now that the trial had ended, he was releasing her before she could wonder whether the protection had become another claim. You are free, he said. His voice lowered. Even from me. Claire looked at the signature. He had not waited for her to ask. He had not waited until they were alone, where gratitude might pressure her answer. He returned her freedom before every witness who had seen him marry her. Why now? She whispered. Because the danger is over. His eyes held hers. And I will not use what saved you as a reason to keep you. Pain moved through Claire. Different from the mate bond. Quieter. More frightening. She had expected Everett's strength to protect her from enemies. She had not expected it to protect her from him. Claire pressed the parchment against her chest. What happens if I sign? You choose your own road. And if that road leaves Ravenshade? The south gate remains open. And if it returns? For the first time, emotion broke through Everett's control. Hope. Carefully restrained. Then I will be there. Claire looked at the man fate had never named. The man who had asked permission before every touch. Who had stood as witness instead of shield. Who had offered marriage as a door and freedom as proof that it had never been a cage. She did not sign immediately. That mattered. She took the covenant with her. And Everett let her. 1 year passed. Silverpine formed a new council with equal representatives from Alpha, Beta and Omega households. Mason left the Northern Territories during the rebuilding period. He wrote to Claire once. He did not ask her to return. He admitted that he had confused being needed with being loved, and leadership with the right to decide for others. Claire kept the letter. She did not answer. Some truths deserved recognition, not reconciliation. Lillian worked beside Evelyn and Noah restoring the names of women removed from Covenant history. She did not ask Claire for forgiveness. She brought evidence. Corrected records. Returned inheritance claims. When families refused to trust her, she accepted their anger. When Claire spoke to her, their conversations remained careful. Sisterhood was not restored in one apology. It was rebuilt through choices no one applauded. Evelyn returned to public service as the first independent moon echo recorder under the new covenant. Claire established the House of Freeauds between Ravenshade and Silverpine, a sanctuary where any person could question a mate bond, marriage vow or service covenant without punishment. Everett sent builders only when Claire requested them. He sent food when winter arrived early. He never entered the sanctuary council room without invitation. His letters came without pressure. He wrote about Noah becoming the youngest archive apprentice to repair a royal seal, about a raven that stole documents from his window, about the wooden record case whose clasp still refused to remain straight. He never asked whether Claire had signed the release covenant. She had. Months earlier. The marriage that began as protection had legally ended. But Claire kept the first iron archive key. On the anniversary of the moon trial, she returned to Ravenshade. No royal procession met her. Everett stood alone in the archive courtyard beneath the first winter snow. His breath stilled when he saw her. Claire carried a new parchment tied with blue ribbon. You came back. I said the road might. He looked at the parchment. What is it? A marriage covenant. Everett did not reach for it. Claire stepped closer. The first time I married you, I needed a door out of Silverpine. She placed the document in his hands. This time I need nothing. His eyes lifted to hers. Then why are you here? Because you never asked me to become smaller so you could feel powerful. Snow rested in his dark hair. Claire continued. Because you told me the truth when it gave me reasons to doubt you. Because you returned my freedom before asking for my heart. Her voice softened. And because I learned that fate can recognize a bond. She touched his hand. But only freedom can make it love. Everett looked down at the covenant. It contained no transfer of title. No surrender of land. No permanent claim. Either could leave. Both retained their names and authority. The final line had been written in Claire's hand. We stand beside one another because each dawn, we remain free to choose again. Everett's fingers trembled around the parchment. Claire. She smiled through sudden tears. I am asking you now. His voice became rough. Are you certain? She listened. No fracture. Only the man beneath the crown, still making space for her answer. Yes. This time Everett reached for her. He stopped before touching her face. May I? Claire leaned into his hand. Yes. Their second wedding took place beneath the restored covenant bells. Evelyn stood beside Claire. Noah carried the first oath. Lillian remained among the witnesses, not claiming a place that had not yet been returned to her. There was no Luna crown. No bondkeeper stone. No language of ownership. When Claire and Everett joined hands, the covenant bell rang once. No hidden voices rose. No fractures broke the silence. The sound was clear. Whole. Chosen. Mason had been the mate fate gave her. Everett was the man Claire chose after she finally belonged to herself, and when the Alpha King kissed her beneath the winter moon, he did not stand before her as her ruler. He stood beside her as her equal.